session on Monday, we discussed about the problem 3 and also the life cycle of the project. I already sent you by email the presentation, and also in the campus it is going to be available the video of the class to look at it at any moment. And well, we are going to start right now the second session. I am also admitting some new participants, and I'm going to share my screen.
Sure, sure. Don't go ahead.
Okay, right. Well, um, we are going to continue today with the project formulation guide that we start on Monday. Today we are going to see three topics: the background, especially the stakeholder analysis, the alternatives of solutions and selection of the project, and also the objectives, and a technique called Objective 3 technique. First, remember our components in the project identification document, the project background analysis that we are going to discuss today, the problem identification that we discuss on Monday, the solution alternatives that we are going to discuss today, also the selecting the project alternative, the general and specific objectives, justification of the project, related development strategies, current and future availability of resources, and logical framework matrix. So let's start with the background analysis of stakeholders. Remember that every document of project identification starts with the project background analysis. Um, in this section, a quantitative and qualitative diagnosis of the situation that originates the problem is made. It is recommended to assess the problem's position in the case of no acting, that is, an appreciation of the situation without a project, as well as a projection of this with a project. Within this section, it is pertinent to carry out the involvement analysis, permanent input, and constant updating during the project's life cycle. So, in the background analysis, we establish two realities in the future of the situation without a project and what will happen if the project is on board. And second, we make the stakeholder analysis. This is going to be important because it is an input in all the life cycle to have it there, and also it is an important input for the logical framework matrix. Well, how to do a stakeholder analysis? To perform the analysis of the involved, the following matrix is recommended with the element of groups, interests or expectations, perceived problems, mandates and resources, and potential conflicts. So there is a simple chart with the groups, the interests, the perceived problems, the mandate and resources, and the potential conflicts. The groups in the stakeholder analysis, these are those affected by the project positively or negatively, either by the problem or possible solutions. The interests or expectations are the aspirations of the groups around the solution of the problem, as well as alternative solutions that may arise from themselves. Perceived problems are either the perception of groups' specified issues, the mandates and resources. In the case of orders, they refer to the formal authority the groups have to provide a good or service as part of their regulations and status, among others. Meanwhile, the resources refer to financial, political, technical, etc. And potential conflicts, the problem that can be mapped during the design and execution of the program. So, are the components of the stakeholder analysis, also the components of the chart of stakeholders. And there is some important issues. For example, if there is a group that it is against the project and maybe they have the resources to make to make a mobilization to close a street, for example, or to go to the government to send letters, etc. it is important to have it there in the chart so we can design actions to prevent that. Or for example, if in our project the local government is against and the local government has to bring some permissions to the infrastructure, etc., maybe it will be a potential conflict, right? So in this stakeholder analysis, this is an instrument that we use, that we decide at the beginning of the project, and we are going to constantly go back to look at it, to actualize it, and also to design actions um, to prevent any risk. In the case of the stakeholder analysis, anyone has any question, etc., or comments maybe, or it is very clear. Okay, let's move on. So, well, let's start with the alternatives of solutions and selection of the projects. In this case, um, when we are going to do a project, it may be like a lot of alternatives, a lot of ideas of projects to perform. So it may be difficult, especially if we are working in a group with different interests, different ideas, different beliefs. So this is it is difficult maybe to search for an agreement between everyone about the real project or the project to perform. So in this case, there are some relevant questions that we need to ask yourself and ask to the groups to start precising which will be the best project. So for the definition of the alternatives of projects to solve the problem, it is imperative to reflect on three aspects when defining the alternatives. Is the problem solved with one or more project alternatives? Can the problem be solved by optimizing the current situation without drastic changes? Is the solution of the problem so expensive and complex that the best option is not to carry out any any project? Well, let me see. Jermaine asked me in the chat, um, how do you make sure you identify all the stakeholders? Maybe you are not sure enough, 100% that you identified all the stakeholders, but because of it, it is important, like this within this section, it is pertinent to carry out the involvement analysis as a permanent input and constant updating during the project life cycle. You first start with a first proposal of a stakeholder analysis, and in the road, maybe you identify new groups or are groups that maybe are not the stakeholders in the reality. So this is a constant exercise during all the project life cycle. All good, Jeremy?
Yes, all good. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we have these three relevant questions. Again, is the problem solved with one or more project alternatives? For example, if we are talking about poverty, that is a multidimensional problem. It is impossible to design one project that will solve all the alternatives, right? We maybe are going to need a project portfolio in this case. Can the problem be solved by optimizing the current situation without drastic changes? For example, not building a new aqueduct, but just refreshing the actual infrastructure. And is the solution to the problem so expensive and complex that the best option is not to carry out any project? If it is very expensive, so maybe we are going to have problems in the future in the execution. The project ideas should be based on quantitative and qualitative information, considering the overall cost of the proposal, as well as the feasibility and viability of the proposal. So you have the problem and you have different options, right? Project A, project B, optimizing of the existing situation, or not doing something, right? That is always an option in this case. Now, in the case of alternative selection, when selecting the best project alternative, it is essential to have experience in the field as well as a deep knowledge of the problem to be able to elucidate through parameters and technical assessments the advantages of one or another initiative over the others. So we can do it in many ways. I'm going to show you two. The first one, a very simple matrix that you see in the slide. We have at the left, at the first column, the project A, project B, project C, the optimization, and obviously to nothing, the advantages of each initiative, the disadvantages of this initiative, the feasibility, the technical feasibility, the viability, it can be social, political, etc., and also the cost, right? So in this first chart, maybe we have enough inputs to choose one alternative based on the advantage, disadvantage, feasibility, viability, and cost. Maybe there are some projects, for example, I don't know, in this case, project A, an optimization that you can, when you made the matrix, you see that they are like equal, no, and you are not sure. So you can advance to a second instrument that is a matrix of points. And we put in these different criteria, and in the criteria we made some points on each criteria, and finally the best average is going to be selected. So to make this a little bit more dynamic, I also have a video for everyone that for me shows some things, shows a matrix, a point matrix, and also also some criteria that are very interesting. And well, it is an example that you can have there in mind. So I'm going to um, put the video for you, are only 5 minutes, and then we're going to discuss a little bit. Okay, let me see. Sorry.
In this topic, we'll be discussing project identification and selection. Now, there are three basic steps in a lean project lifecycle. So the lifecycle of a project begins at the project identification stage, then the project selection stage, followed by the project management. So following your meetings and discussions with the project sponsors, the champions, and the process owners, your team typically brainstorms to figure out project ideas. The project hopper is a centralized storage area for potential process improvement and project ideas. So there could be several considerations when coming up with a list of project ideas. A long list may be qualified, and then just a few ideas are shortlisted. Now, in the project identification and selection process, we typically have 4 steps. The first step is the short list of project opportunities. The second step is determining the selection criteria. Step 3 is prioritizing the project opportunities. And then step 4, ultimately selecting the best project opportunity. Now, in wanting to select the best project opportunity, there are other dimensions to consider. So when we're ranking potential projects, you can use different elements or dimensions to help you identify it. In this case, we have 3 examples: the scale of benefit, ease of implementation, and other considerations. Under scale of benefit, we're thinking about the size of the opportunity, or we're looking at the money that is going to be saved, or is there a cost avoidance if we prioritize this project and work on it first? What's the repeatable benefit? These are all examples of the scale. When we look at ease of implementation, it's just that. Is there the estimated resource hours? Are they reasonable? Are they realistic? Is a project important and at the same time with a minimal amount of hours required, in which case that might be a good candidate for a project versus one that's going to require many resources and lots of hours. The estimated timescale, the estimated level of resistance. How much resistance are we going to face if we try to implement this process or look at changing this process? Or the number of cross-functional teams impacted. If you have a process that's impacting several different cross-functional teams, it could be more complicated to implement immediately. So again, another area of focus or dimension to consider. And then you have other considerations. For example, do the projects align to strategy? If they're aligned to strategy, they'll most likely be supported and therefore possibly good candidates for a project. Do they sustain or develop client focus? Is it related to a quality policy? Maybe it's a requirement that needs to be fulfilled. And is there capital required? Which, if capital is available, is a good thing. If it's not available, it could prioritize that particular project lower down on the list. Now, another way to help guide and score your project ideas is by using a priority matrix. You've got a different element of scoring related to the scale of complexity of the project. So as an example, you might have a weighting, and then you have a score from 1 to 10, and the multiplication of these 2 factors give you an overall weighted score that then you can use to prioritize the projects with. A higher score against criteria that is more important or weighted higher will likely show up on the top and therefore most likely be the project you'd want to work on. So let's look at some project examples. Onboarding program for staff, improving turnaround. You might have a weight.
Let's stop here for a minute. See, for example, this using priority matrix. They establish criteria that are very interesting. Organizational alignment, that is very good. The project benefits, right? External customers, external stakeholders. So the background analysis that we already did was important. Employee or internal customers, others. Resources required, very important. Scope in terms of required returns, clarity of deliverables, time to complete. Maybe if we are in a government and the government only have like 1 year, and then it will finish, this is a very important criteria. And also team membership requirement that is also important. So this is a good for me, a good first step of using a priority matrix. Let's continue.
And then you have a score from 1 to 10, and the multiplication of these 2 factors give you an overall weighted score that then you can use to prioritize the projects with. A higher score against criteria that is more important or weighted higher will likely show up on the top and therefore most likely be the project you'd want to work on. So let's look at some project examples. Onboarding program for staff, improving turnaround times for project approvals, both really good examples of administrative elements or projects that can be used to demonstrate in a new environment on how the project process works. Streamlining meal delivery, again, a very relevant project. You're helping make a process that an end patient or client is requiring easier and more enjoyable. Reducing elective surgery cancellations. Improving the process for restocking a supply. Again, a very administrative but essential process to look at in terms of an improvement project. Medication supplies ordering and delivery. Can we make that process optimal? Turnaround time for a new program development. These are all good examples of projects. There are cases where you should avoid specific projects. And they aren't projects that have specific areas of focus per se, but they're ones where, as an example, you have lack of sponsorship. If you don't have a sponsor that will remain hands-on through the process to help you remove roadblocks, that's not a project that you should probably take on. There will be a high risk that it will fail. Lack of organizational support. Again, very similar to lack of sponsorship. If the organization is really not interested in helping provide you resources, tools, etc., then the likelihood of that project being successful will be quite low. Lack of strategic alignment. This is an important one. When you're choosing a project, ensure that it's aligning to the strategic focus for the organization. Because if not, and rightfully so, people will be asking, why are we doing it? And again, mostly a technical element, lack of project definition. As I always say, if you're going to go to a meeting, always ensure that you have an agenda for the meeting, because an agenda for the meeting suggests and shows that there is a focus for that meeting. So whoever organized that meeting will have a very specific focus in conducting it. And so an agenda demonstrates that that's the case. In the case of a project, if there isn't a clear definition, if you haven't seen a project charter or you haven't seen an A3 or any document that outlines the specifics of the project, it's probably a project that you should avoid.
Okay. Comments, questions about the selecting alternatives of selection of the projects. Phillips, you can say it also in a microphone if you want to. German, yeah.
My question is, how do you determine what weighting to give for different criteria?
It is very subjective. For example, if in your organization you have like a lot of money, maybe um, to invest in projects, maybe that weight is going to be less. But if you have a scarcity of resources, um, that criteria is going to be like bigger, right? Also, for example, if in your project you need to um, have the government approval, you need to sell it to the government, for example, for financing and etc. So the alignment to the development policies, to the policies of the government is going to be more important, right? Because it has like um, that important criteria in in the in the financial of the project. So it's a little bit subjective. It depends on the context of the project. It is important to make it like in a teamwork, right? To have different criteria to to have a more accurate weight for each criteria. Jeremy.
Okay, that was also kind of my question, but in the same direction of that question, I have another question about the scoring. How do you? It's kind of subjective if you feel like you give a score of 10 and someone else wants to give a score of 5 maybe. How do you make sure you give the right score to a certain say topic?
Well, when we design the project matrix, it is important to look for a in Spanish is acuerdo, to look for a consensus, maybe to look to a that everyone is on board, right, with the weights that we determine. So we need to negotiate maybe if we think that the criteria of financing has a bigger or less percentage. So we need to previously of selecting the alternative and ranking it. It is important to, in a team, look for a negotiation for the right amount of weight of each criteria. Because if there is no agreement, it's going to be difficult later for especially when two projects are like very equal, right? But finally, German, it is a an agreement into the team, right? Into the team that is proposing the project.
Okay, it's kind of a subjective thing. You can't really base it on facts. Let's say something like that. There are no standards. It's subjective.
Yeah, but for example, it is also depend on the context, right, of the organization. Like I said before, if we have a lot of budget, well, maybe the financial criteria isn't so important, but if we have a scarcity, it will become very important the financial criteria, right? So
Okay, indeed. Thank you.
if- another question, comment about this topic of selecting alternatives. Do you like the video? It was clear. Okay, so let's have a little recess. Take a coffee, etc., and we're going to talk later of objectives. And so see you in 10 minutes. Okay, welcome back, participants. Are we here already? Participants, are we here? Someone tell me something.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Okay. In the last class, we talked about the problem tree technique. So right now we're going to discuss the objectives tree technique. So the project objectives, the importance. For the establishment of the objectives of the project, it is recommended that they be concrete, precise, clear, and achievable goals. They must also be framed in time limits and project's available resources. Establishing the overall objective must be linked to the development strategies and achievements expected with the project in the operation phase. A specific objective can be linked to the project's operation and investment phases. In the first case, they correspond to the direct and particular effect or purpose expected to be achieved with the entry into operation of the initiative. In the second case, they are objectives that guide the project during its execution phase. In the case of this exercise and the lessons, we are only going to focus mainly in the objectives of operations, not in the investment phase, because in the investment phase, we need to do before the objective also have the technical study. So it's like another phase. The objective tree. For the designs of the objective tree, the following steps must be followed, taking into account the problem tree previously designed. So, define the overall objectives, which is the solution to the core problem identified in the problem tree. Conversion of the leading causes of the problem into specific objectives and the indirect causes into the components, which will then be used in the logical framework that we're going to see next class. Conversion of the effects of the problem tree into the ends of the objective tree, and also conversion of the final effect of the problem tree into the end of the development of the goal tree. So it is like this. Remember our problem tree? There was a central problem, also direct cause 1, direct cause 2, indirect causes. So we transform the problem tree into the objective tree. So the central problem becomes the general objective, that direct cause 1, direct cause 2 becomes the specific goal 1, specific goals 2, and the indirect causes become the components. These are going to be later in the logical framework matrix. Remember this was the cost tree, right? The cost tree of the program tree. Now this is the objective tree of the general objective. Then remember we have the central problem and also the effect tree in the problem tree technique. This transform in the end tree of the objective tree. So the central problem again become the general objective. The effect 1 and effect 2 become the end 1 and end 2. The indirect effects becomes the indirect ends, and the final effect becomes the main ending. And in this logic, we use the problem tree to design the objective tree. So, with the concepts and this transformation of the problem tree into the objective tree, does anyone has any question before looking some examples? Or it is clear? Anyone? Okay, then let's look some examples. The same two of the last session. Remember we had the Colusa Inc. example. Remember Colusa Inc. is a company that provides web hosting services. For some time now, 6 months to be more exact, it has been presenting a higher number of complaints and claims from its customers. This situation has impacted the company's finances and threatens to further reduce its customer base. In addition, Colusa Inc. has been left with an obsolete technological infrastructure, while its competitors, of which there are many, have upgraded their services or are in the process of doing so. In other words, Colusa has realized that it is not keeping up with market trends, and this is impacting service delivery. And if that were not enough, the company has been experiencing massive employment resignation. So last session, we look at this example. This was the context. This was the problem 3 of Colusa. If we saw it here, we have the central problem that they define, but increasing the number of complaints and claims made by customers. It was also direct causes, poor after-sales services, poor product quality, increasing product prices, and indirect causes, insufficient staff training, poor staff attitude, product is damaged very quickly, delayed product performance, not enough productivity, and increasing raw material prices. Then the effects, decrease in purchase made by customers, degradation of the image made by the company, strengthening of competence, loss of labor motivation, decrease in market share, loss of profit, and finally, a final effect will be the bankruptcy, right, of Colusa. So this was the problem 3. Then after this, they designed the objective 3, that is this one. So um, the central problem was the increase in the number of complaints and claims. In the objective 3, the main objective is decrease in customers' complaints and claims. For example, a direct cause here was poor after-sale services. A specific goal here is excellent after-sale services. Poor product quality transforms into improved quality of products and services, and increasing product prices transforms into decrease in prices of product and services. Also, the indirect causes, for example, insufficient staff training, because staff train and evaluate to provide customers. Poor staff attitude transform into personnel with service attitude, and so on. And in the case of the effect 3, for example, decrease in purchases made by customers becomes increased customer purchases. Degradation of the image made by the company becomes the improved company image, and strengthening of competence becomes a strengthening of the company's competitiveness in the objective stream. So in this transformation of Colusa for the problem 3 into the objective 3, does anyone has any commentaries, any questions, thoughts about this? Someone? Anyone?
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Yes, it seems like the problem 3 or the what is the other one? You have the problem 3 and
This is the objective 3.
the objective 3. Yes, it seems as if the problem 3 is quite the opposite of the objective 3. But I was wondering, is it always the case that you have like a contradiction between the two topics? Let's say.
Yeah. Well, more than a contradiction, I think is a transformation. So remembering this, This was our problem 3, and it transforms into the objective 3, right? So it may be seen like a contradiction, yeah. But after all, the objective 3 is the response of the problem 3, right? So it may be, yes, contradictory, but essentially it's a transformation, right? We based our objective 3 on the um, problem 3 designed before. Good, Jeremy?
Yes, it, I was just curious if there are some like examples of a problem that has what is it, an objective that is not really in contrast with it. So I was just wondering if it's always a contradiction, or like if there could be something else. It could be something else.
Yeah, for me, um, there isn't. Okay, well, we always base our objective 3 in a response to the central problem, right? So it may be always be related um, if the problem 3 is good, right? If the design of the problem 3 was good. If we saw, for example, that the central problem transforms in a general objective that has nothing to do with the central problem, or it is not aligned very well, so maybe the project 3, the problem 3 was bad, was wrong, or maybe the objective 3 is wrong. But this always need to be like a correlation, right, between one another. Um, Rename put in the chat, while the decrease in raw material prices is a direct objective of the problem 3, how suitable is this objective in the context of a company having influence over this variable? Should objective 3 capture all possible objectives, including ones subject to external influence? Renee, can you explain it a little bit more, the question?
Hi, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. What I'm essentially asking is the decrease in raw material prices, if this is something that the company can't influence for themselves. So a company may not necessarily be able to cause a decrease in the raw material prices because they may be purchasing raw materials from another supplier unless they are the owners of that raw material. The only way, or the one of the main ways that they can have a decrease in the product price is maybe primarily through increase in productivity versus the decrease in the raw material prices. I'm just wondering if the tree is supposed to capture all possible alternatives, even things that the company may not necessarily have influence over.
Yeah, well, look at in the objective 3, um, the response to the increase in raw material prices is decrease in raw material prices and negotiations with suppliers, right? So they are saying they can do it by themselves, but they are going to try it, basically, no? Put good negotiators there with the suppliers to try to lower the or to decrease the material prices. But it is true what you're saying. This do not depend exclusively of Colusa Inc., but well, they are going to try it, right? So the strategy that they are designing is a negotiation with suppliers. Let's see in the future if this is um, a good strategy or not, right? But it's what they are trying to do.
Okay, thanks. I wasn't seeing the negotiation with suppliers in the PowerPoint mode.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Me too. So that's why I decrease a little bit the screen. Some comments about this transformation of the problem 3 into the objective 3 in the case of Colusa. Okay, let's move to our second example. Remembering Las Margaritas that we discussed last week, the main problem that they designed was a poor housing conditions in Las Margaritas. The causes was houses densely populated and also difficulty accessing basic services. The indirect causes was problems obtaining housing, non-existent housing supply, insufficient community organization, and lower managerial capacity in the municipal government for implementation. Also, the cause of the indirect cost was low saving capacity, lack of saving culture, underutilization of government housing projects, and also, this was the cost three. And the effect three was direct effect, family problems, high level of overcrowding, increasing promiscuity. We have a discussion last week about this, the pertinence of or not of this effect. Also, greater risk to citizen safety, high level of if interfamily violence, susceptibility to alcoholism and drug addiction, and elevated health risk. So this was the problem three of La Margaritas, and then they transform it into this. So we have here the objectives tree. So in the problem three, in the problem three, the main problem was poor housing conditions. Here, the main objective is improve housing condition in the Margaritas. Later, we have houses densely populated and difficulty accessing basic service. Now we have how less densely populated and improved access to basic services. Back then, we have problems obtaining housing and non-existing housing supplies, insufficient community organization, and low managerial. Now we have easier to obtain houses, greater housing and supply, improved community organization, and great managerial capacity in the municipal government for project implementation. Later, we have low saving capacity, lack of saving culture, underutilization of government housing projects. Now we have um, improved saving capacity, improved saving culture, greater utilization of government using projects. And in this case, before we have family problems, high level of overcrowding, and increase in promiscuity, now we have improved family life, lower levels of overcrowding, and a decrease in promiscuity. It will be very interesting how to measure this. And back then we have greater risk to citizen safety, high level of interfamily violence, susceptibility to alcoholism and drug addiction, and elevated health risks. Now we have decreased risk to citizen safety, reduced interfamily violence, lower rates of alcoholism and drug addiction, and a reduced in health risk. So, as you can see, there is a transformation between the problem three and this objective three. What do you think about these transformations in the case of Las Margaritas? Comments, doubts? Someone? Are we good in this case? Everything good? Renee, German? Everything clear? Andrew, Taylor, Lawrence, Samantha, Ria, go ahead. Ria Martinez, I can't hear you. You have your microphone on, but I can hear you. Maria, maybe you can put a question in the chat, um, because I can hear you. Maybe while German.
Yes,
German.
yeah, I was just wondering. I see they have like an objective, lower rates of alcoholism, reduce health risk, and so forth. So like they try to lower or reduce the things, but was it not better to like try to eliminate the risk, the health risk, the rates of alcoholism? You're trying to eliminate it, but in the process, like you will automatically lower it. Would that be
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a very interesting question for me. Um, the the alcoholism, the interfamily violence, also the promiscuity, they are caused by the improved housing conditions, but also are caused by other problems. Well, I think the drug addiction may be an effect of a poor housing condition, but also maybe an effect of educational matters, employment, etc. So maybe um, we are solving here one problem of housing, but there are also other problems that also cause alcoholism and drug addiction. Also health risks, also intrafamily violence. So maybe um, solving this one problem of housing will contribute to lower alcoholism, drug addiction, etc. But there are also other problems that also influence those effects. So maybe that is why they are only lowering it, not eliminating it. Do you agree, Jeremy?
Yes, I understand that, but my my point was like in the you know that you won't be able, or yeah, you can be realistic and say if you won't be able to eliminate it, but um if you just have that like an objective, and in the process you will automatically like reduce the health risk and lower the rates of alcoholism and so forth. So it's like you have an objective, but if you don't, you know you won't be able to realize that objective, but in the process of trying to realize that objective, you lower or reduce those effects or impacts. So that was my remark.
Yeah. No, I understand. I understand very well. But yes, well, for me, it is accurate that if you know you are not going to eliminate alcoholism, drug addiction, etc., promiscuity, so it is accurate to only put like lower, decrease, to reduce. Well, but I understand your point very well. Mia is writing. Well, I was not present for the last class, says Ria. How do we measure improvement to social issues like alcoholism and promiscuity? In the case of promiscuity, I have no idea how to measure the decrease in promiscuity. Maybe maybe I don't know really. But in the case of alcoholism, drug addiction, etc., maybe for example, the conflicts generated by alcoholism, drug addiction, intrafamily violence has an echo in the police office. Maybe the calls, the number of problem report to the police, for example. So maybe you can use that the phone calls, etc., like an indicator. Or also you can apply some interviews, right? Some, like in Spanish is encuestas. In English, yeah, some interviews to the community to see if they see uh, a reduce in alcoholism and drug addiction, etc. Right? Also, look, in the case of promiscuity, we have reduced health risks. So maybe, I don't know, maybe and the promiscuity and having sex without protection, etc., maybe is causing some diseases, right? So in the sanitarian system, in the health system, maybe we can see right now the indicator of how many related to promiscuity health six health problems can be there, and maybe you can measure it when it lowers the reports in the health system, maybe. Okay, let's see. We have some questions. Um, well, Phillips says, will the ends also become the outcomes? Okay, let's see. I'm not um I'm not sure what the outcomes, the concept of the outcomes in this case refers to. But we can see that later in the matrix, in the logical framework matrix, the endings will become later will become like the purpose, right? Um, and maybe we can also design some activities related to those ends. Let's see. Renee can lower rates of alcoholism, alcohol sales purchased in the Margaritas and surrounding communities be measured by alcohol sales. Can lower rates of alcoholism be measured by alcohol sales purchases in the Margaritas and surrounding communities, or is too simple to be an indicator? I think it's good. It's a good indicator for me. I don't know what you think, but for me, a lower purchase of alcohol can be one of the indicators. Maybe not the only indicator, but for me, it can be one of the indicators. Okay. Who else? More questions, comments about this or today's lesson in general? Okay, Ria asked a very interesting question. What will be the maturation period of the project with regards to the social issue measures? Okay, in this case, we have the problem 3, the objective 3, but we don't have the project, right? So we don't know. We are going to look at it later in the framework matrix, but we at this point we don't know what the project is, right? If it is, I don't know, maybe um, the construction some more house, for example, or the improve, I don't know, maybe a committee for improving community organization, etc. But at this point, we don't know the project. We are going to see in the next class, in the logical framework matrix, the projects that they design and the activity that they design, and how do they measure these lower rates of alcoholism, drug addiction, etc. Maria, so wait, like one more day, please, to ask to respond your question. More comments, people, questions? Remember today's lesson, we have the objective 3, the problem 3, the alternative selection, the solution alternatives, and also the stakeholder analysis. In general, Okay, well, Jeremy.
Yes, the previous session I asked a question about the solutions, how you can uh couple the solutions with the problem tree, and you stated that you would be going into that during this presentation. So I was wondering when if you were if you have slides about that that topic.
Yeah, let's see. Um, well, two main ideas in this case. First, well, we already saw, right? The some alternatives, some techniques for selecting a project and etc. Right? Um, remember this. Let's see. Okay, we do the background analysis, right? First step, we do the problem identification. Then we select the alternatives, and also then um, we design the objective tree based on the alternative that we already decided, right? So the alternatives are solutions of the problems that we identified back then. And then after we select our alternative, we generate our objective tree, right? So um, later on, maybe um, when we design the logical framework matrix, we will see the alternatives that we select later, and all of these are finally in harmony, right? But Jeremy, this is like the logic of the identification project. Also, I'm going to tell you that this exercise of the design of the project identification, maybe it is not like a linear exercise. Maybe you are starting with the solution alternative, then you do the background, then you start looking for availability of resources, then would you made the general specific objective, for example, like a linear activity activities, but the document per se has this this logic. So um, later on, um, yeah, in this case, yes, in the next class, when we are going to see the logical framework matrix, we're going to see how the problem, the alternative, the objective, finally are in harmony in a logical framework matrix, and all finally is related in each step to each one. All good, German?
Yes, I see now the relationship between the problem and the solutions. I missed that the first part, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm also going to send you um, the presentation and also the video that we saw. So we can have all the inputs for next class. Some questions, again, comments on these criterias, material. Someone? Okay. Then we are ready for today. Some comments on Monday. We're going to have a session of the logical framework matrix. It is a very, let's see, it is a very depth theme, right? Is where we're going to see the logical framework matrix of the Colusa Inc. Example. It is a very big matrix, so we're going to start seeing the components, etc. But well, I hope I made the class clear. Comments, people? Or are we okay for today? Okay. Rini is writing and also Ria. Thank you, Rini. Yes, very clever. Thank you very much. See you on Monday. I will sending you the link an hour before the session at 8 a.m. Costa Rican time to be starting at 9 a.m. Costa Rican time. Thank you very much. See you soon.
Yes, thanks, Diego, for the presentation. Until
Okay,
Monday.
thank you.